Anna Carter had always believed that family meant safety. At 26, she thought that no matter how difficult life became, her parents would be there when it truly mattered. That belief collapsed at exactly 3:15 a.m. under the harsh fluorescent lights of a Massachusetts hospital emergency room. Anna lay on a narrow gurney, her body battered from a violent car crash that had folded metal like paper. Each breath sent a sharp, burning pain through her chest, and the taste of blood lingered in her mouth. A trauma doctor stood beside her, calm but direct, explaining that she had internal bleeding and needed surgery immediately. There was a complication. Years earlier, Anna had suffered a severe reaction to standard anesthesia, and this time a different protocol was required. Hospital policy demanded consent from a legal family member before proceeding. Before I continue, I want to ask for a favor. We're building this channel one story at a time, and your support truly means more than you know. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. That simple action helps this channel grow and allows me to keep sharing stories like this with you. Anna's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Pain blurred her vision, but fear was worse. She knew the surgery could not wait. What she did not yet know was that her parents would. Anna called her father first. The phone rang until it cut to voicemail. She tried her mother next, then her father again. Voicemail. With shaking fingers, she left short, breathless messages, her voice cracking as she explained that she was injured and needed them right away. Minutes stretched into an hour. Nurses moved quickly around her, machines beeped steadily, and the smell of disinfectant filled the air. Finally, her phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. It was from her father, David Carter. "Can this wait? We're in the middle of meeting with clients." Anna stared at the words, reading them again and again, unable to process what they meant. The pain in her ribs flared as her chest tightened. He was asking her to delay emergency surgery because he was busy. The realization struck harder than the crash itself. In that moment, Anna understood that she was alone. A sob tore from her chest, raw and uncontrollable, making her broken body ache even more. The room felt suddenly very large and very empty. A male nurse named Ryan Collins noticed immediately. He stepped to Anna's side, speaking softly, telling her to breathe. A social worker, Angela Brown, joined him, her expression gentle but focused. Angela crouched beside the gurney and asked a simple question. "Anna, is there anyone else we can call for you?" The question broke something open inside her. Through tears, Anna gave them the only other number she had. Her grandfather, George Miller. Angela left the room to make the call. The minutes felt endless. When she returned, she offered a small, reassuring smile. "He's on his way," she said. "He lives about 50 miles out, but he said he'll be here in under an hour." Anna closed her eyes, barely holding on. True to his word, George arrived before the hour was up. He rushed into the emergency room wearing an old flannel shirt, sawdust still clinging to the fabric. At 7:04, he moved with urgency, his weathered hands gripping Anna's gently. "I'm here," he said quietly, and the weight in her chest finally eased. George listened carefully as the doctor explained the risks and the urgency of the surgery. He asked clear, practical questions, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. When the clipboard was handed to him, he did not hesitate. He signed the consent forms with firm strokes of the pen. As the nurses prepared to wheel Anna toward the operating room, George leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "I'll be right here when you wake up," he said. "You don't need to worry." Hours later, Anna surfaced slowly from anesthesia, her body heavy and sore. The first thing she saw was George sitting in a chair beside her bed. His gray hair was rumpled, and a folded newspaper rested on his lap. He had not left. Seeing him there unlocked a flood of memories Anna had avoided for years. Her parents, David and Susan Carter, were successful financial advisors who lived in a sleek condo and measured everything by value and return. When Anna had chosen nonprofit work over a higher-paying career, their praise had been thin and conditional. George had always been different. He showed up when no one else did. 4 days after the surgery, Anna's parents finally arrived at the hospital. They entered the room briskly, as if stepping into an obligation rather than a crisis. David checked his phone while Susan placed a small bag of store-bought candy on the bedside table. "You look better," Susan said, avoiding Anna's eyes. She immediately complained about parking. David paced near the window and asked how soon Anna thought she could return to work. They stayed for exactly 35 minutes. They did not ask about her pain or the surgery. When they left for a dinner appointment, the silence they left behind felt heavier than their presence. Later that day, the medical team discussed discharge plans and explained that Anna could not manage stairs for at least 6 weeks. Panic rose in her chest. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor. Before she could speak, George calmly said, "She'll come home with me." He explained that his house was 1 level and that he would take care of her. No one argued. For the first time since the crash, Anna felt safe. George Miller's house sat at the edge of a quiet town, modest and worn in the way of places that had been lived in honestly. The moment Anna arrived, he moved with quiet efficiency, directing the nurse, adjusting pillows, clearing space. "You're not a burden," he said when Anna tried to apologize. "You're my granddaughter." "That's not the same thing." He set her up in the spare bedroom, pulling the curtains just enough to let in afternoon light. That first night, the pain came in waves, sharp and unforgiving. When Anna gasped, George appeared in the doorway without being called. "I heard you breathe different," he said simply. He sat beside her bed until the pain passed, telling her about a crooked cabinet he once built and had to tear down twice before it stood straight. "Some things take rebuilding," he said, not looking at her, but she understood exactly what he meant. In the quiet hours, Anna found herself staring at her phone, waiting for a message she knew would not come. She hated that reflex. Even after the rushed hospital visit, even after the parking complaints and the clipped questions, some part of her still hoped her parents might soften. One night, she finally said it out loud. "Why do I still want them to care?" George was sanding a piece of wood at the kitchen table, his hands steady. He stopped and looked at her. "Because you were trained to," he said. "When love is rare, you start mistaking crumbs for meals." The words settled heavily in her chest. Anna remembered every moment she had chased approval that never stayed. The realization was painful, but it was also clarifying. She wasn't weak for wanting her parents' attention. She had simply been conditioned to survive without it. A week later, Anna's neighbor from her apartment building, Sarah Collins, arrived with a large box of mail. "I didn't know what to do with it," Sarah said softly. "I figured it was safer with me." Anna thanked her and carried the box to the kitchen table. At first, it was routine paperwork. Medical bills. Insurance notices. Then she found letters that didn't make sense. Confusing language. References to accounts she hadn't touched. Unease crept in slowly, then all at once. She called her disability insurance provider, forcing her voice to stay calm. After a long hold, a representative spoke. "We've already been contacted by your financial proxies," he said. Anna froze. "My what?" There was a pause. "Your parents," the man replied. "They asked about liquidating the entire policy." The word liquidating echoed in her head. Not accessing. Not managing. Ending it. Anna hung up without another word, her hands cold and steady. She called her father immediately. David answered quickly, his voice light. "Anna, we were wondering when you'd check in." Her reply was controlled. "Why did you try to liquidate my disability policy?" Silence stretched across the line. Then his tone shifted, slow and patronizing. "You're emotional right now. The market's unstable. We were protecting your assets." "Protecting them for who?" Anna asked. He exhaled sharply. "The firm is under pressure. It would have been temporary." The word hit like a slap. "Temporary," she repeated. "You were going to borrow the money I need to survive." His voice hardened. "Don't be dramatic." Anna ended the call. She felt no tears this time, only clarity. This was not misunderstanding. It was intent. Anna returned to the mail with shaking resolve. Near the bottom of the box, she found an envelope from a bank she did not recognize. Inside was a loan rejection notice for a home equity line of credit. The address listed was her apartment. Her father's signature appeared at the bottom. The application date was 2 days after her surgery. Her chest tightened, not with pain, but with fury. While she had been unconscious in the operating room, her father had tried to leverage her home. Anna handed the letter to George without speaking. He read it slowly, his jaw tightening. When he looked up, his voice was low and firm. "This stops now." He walked into his study and returned with an old address book and picked up the landline. "John Harris," he said when the call connected. "It's George Miller. My granddaughter needs help." George held the phone out to Anna. For the first time since the accident, she felt something new take shape inside her. It wasn't fear. It was resolve. John Harris listened without interrupting as Anna explained everything. She told him about the hospital, the delayed consent, the text message, and the quiet cruelty of her parents' visit. Then she laid out the financial details, the attempted liquidation, the loan application, the timing. When she finished, the line stayed silent for a moment. "Anna," John said finally, his voice calm but firm, "what your parents attempted isn't just unethical. It may be fraudulent. They acted while you were incapacitated and used authority you did not knowingly grant." Anna felt a strange steadiness settle in her chest. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," John replied, "you stop engaging with them. I'll draft a full revocation of power of attorney, financial and medical. I'll issue a cease and desist notice. From this point on, any attempt they make to touch your assets goes through me." George placed a reassuring hand on Anna's shoulder as she hung up. For the first time, the situation felt contained. The paperwork arrived the next day. George sat beside Anna as she reviewed each document, explaining clauses in plain language. "This one removes them completely," he said, tapping the page. "This one appoints me. Temporary, until you're ready." Anna signed with care, her hand steady. That afternoon, she called her parents and asked them to come to George's house. "Is this really necessary?" Susan asked sharply. "Yes," Anna said. "It is." They arrived the following afternoon, clearly irritated. David didn't look at her when he walked in. "We have a showing at 3, he said. "Make it quick." He stopped when he noticed John Harris seated across the room, briefcase at his feet. Susan's practiced smile faltered. "Who is this?" Anna met their eyes. "Someone who makes sure this conversation stays honest." They sat today. The room felt small despite the space. Anna slid a manila envelope across the table. "These documents revoke every form of authority you have over my life," she said. "Medical, financial, everything." Susan's face drained of color. "Anna, this is extreme," she whispered. David laughed sharply. "This is absurd. We were helping you." Anna leaned forward. "Helping doesn't involve applying for a loan against my home while I'm in surgery." The laughter stopped. The air shifted. John opened his briefcase and placed copies of the bank notice on the table. David stared at the papers, then away. "You don't understand the pressure we're under," Susan said. "That's not my responsibility," Anna replied. Her voice did not shake. "Sign the papers." David's anger flared, then collapsed. He signed first, his movements sharp and resentful. Susan followed, her hand trembling. When they stood to leave, neither offered an apology. The door closed behind them with a soft final click. Anna exhaled slowly, a breath she felt she had been holding for years. The days that followed were quiet and deliberate. With John's guidance, Anna moved her accounts, changed passwords, placed fraud alerts on her credit, and sold her apartment. She chose a small ground-floor unit across town, simple and accessible. George built a wooden ramp at the entrance, measuring twice before cutting once. "This one's solid," he said. "You won't need it forever, but it'll be here if you do." When Anna returned to work, she wasn't the same person. She spoke with clarity she hadn't known before. Drawing from her experience, she proposed a new initiative at the nonprofit, one that paired patients recovering from major medical events with legal and financial advocates. "People are most vulnerable when they are sick," she told her director. "That's when they need protection the most." The program was approved. Slowly, life filled in around the scars. One evening, Anna hosted dinner in her new apartment. George laughed at the table, Sarah brought dessert, and Ryan stopped by after his shift. As they talked and shared food, Anna looked around the room and felt something settle into place. She wasn't missing anything anymore. She had built something better. Recovery was not fast, but it was honest. Anna learned the limits of her body again, one careful step at a time. Physical therapy was painful, frustrating work, but it gave her structure. George drove her to every appointment and waited in the car, reading the newspaper and waving when she came out. They didn't talk much about her parents anymore. The silence around that subject felt intentional, like a door that had been closed on purpose. Instead, they talked about practical things, groceries, weather, small repairs around the house. Those ordinary conversations grounded Anna. They reminded her that stability wasn't loud or impressive. It was consistent. And for the first time, consistency felt safe. Months passed. The legal matters settled fully, cleanly, without drama. David and Susan did not reach out again. Anna noticed that the absence no longer hurt the way it once had. It felt neutral. Informational. She understood now that silence could be a boundary, not a punishment. At work, the advocacy program grew quickly. Patients responded to it with relief and gratitude. Anna trained volunteers, shared resources, and sat with people who were scared and overwhelmed. She never told them her full story, only enough to let them know they weren't alone. That was enough. Purpose, she learned, didn't come from approval. It came from alignment. One afternoon, Anna visited her old apartment building to return a borrowed tool. She stood at the bottom of the stairs and felt nothing. No longing. No bitterness. Just distance. On the drive home, she stopped at a small craft store and bought clay and paint. That evening, she sat at her kitchen table shaping bowls by hand, her movements slow and deliberate. George watched from the doorway, saying nothing. When she finished, her hands were sore, but her mind was quiet. She placed the bowls on the shelf to dry. They weren't perfect. She liked them anyway. That winter, Anna hosted another dinner. The table was small but full. George told stories. Sarah laughed too loudly. Ryan shuffled a deck of cards and accused George of cheating. "I learned from the best," George said, grinning. The room warmed with easy noise. Anna served the meal in her handmade bowls, the glaze uneven, the edges slightly rough. She watched her guests eat, talk, and linger. No one rushed. No one checked the time. The night unfolded naturally, without performance. Anna realized that this was what she had been searching for all along. Not perfection. Presence. Later, after everyone left, Anna cleaned the dishes slowly. She thought about the girl she had been in the emergency room, staring at her phone, waiting for permission to survive. She understood now that love was not proven by blood or obligation. It was proven by action. By who showed up when things were difficult. By who stayed. Letting go of her parents had not been an act of cruelty. It had been an act of self-preservation. She had not lost a family. She had released an illusion. Before going to bed, Anna stepped onto her small patio and looked at the quiet street. The ramp George had built stood solid beside the steps, weathered but strong. It didn't embarrass her anymore. It reminded her of care, of foresight, of someone who planned for her safety without asking for anything in return. Anna went inside, turned off the lights, and closed the door behind her. Her life was quieter now, but it was full. And for the first time, she knew exactly who her family was. If this story spoke to you, take a moment to sit with it. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't letting go of people, it's giving yourself permission to choose peace. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, know this, you are not alone, and you are not broken. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. Until the next story, take care of yourself.